Biden warns Putin of swift and severe costs as Russia plans to invade Ukraine on Wednesday and Brits told Leave Now. Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin of swift and severe costs tonight after claims Russia is planning to invade Ukraine within days. But bloody conflict still looms after a crunch phone call between the two presidents ended in deadlock with 130,000 troops on the border. Fears are mounting a Russian invasion could happen as early as Wednesday. Russian soldiers taking part in war games near the Ukraine border. Getty. Kremlin forces firing missiles ahead of a possible invasion. Getty. The leaders talked for 1 hour and 2 minutes, but made no real progress amid intelligence reports that Putin will trigger a bomb blitz and ground invasion on Wednesday. Afterwards, the White House said, President Biden was clear that, if Russia undertakes a further invasion of Ukraine, the United States together with our allies and partners will respond decisively and impose swift and severe costs on Russia. President Biden reiterated that a further Russian invasion of Ukraine would produce widespread human suffering and diminish Russia's standing. Leaving the door open to further talks, the U.S. leader said he was prepared to engage in diplomacy while being equally prepared for other scenarios. The Kremlin said it would pause to review U.S. and NATO responses to its proposals for security guarantees before announcing its next actions. Putin has made the impossible demand that Ukraine should never be allowed to join Western alliance NATO. The frosty talks are not understood to have pulled the two sides from the deep freeze over the Ukraine crisis. U.S. President Joe Biden warned his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin that invading Ukraine would cause widespread human suffering, as Britain's urge to flee the region began arriving back in the UK. The White House account of the crisis call on Saturday said Biden warned an attack would diminish Russia's standing as the West pinned hopes on diplomacy to avert war. They spoke after French President Emmanuel Macron also shared a call with Putin, with fears of an imminent attack heightening. UK nationals in Ukraine are being urged by the Foreign Office to leave now while commercial means are still available. Armed Forces Minister James Heap warned Russia is in a position to be able to attack very quickly, with an estimated 130,000 troops on Ukraine's border. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said she discussed her acute concerns during a call on Saturday with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. We agree Russia will face massive consequences for any invasion, including severe sanctions, she said. The Foreign Office's order to leave was issued as intelligence and advice from experts on the ground suggested an increased threat level, with an invasion at some point deemed highly likely. Mr. Heap told the BBC, "We are now confident that the artillery systems, the missile systems and the combat air are all in place that would allow Russia to launch, at no notice, an attack on Ukraine." Ukraine is not a NATO member and allies in the defense alliance have said they would not join fighting in Ukraine, but have bolstered forces in neighboring nations and are threatening widespread sanctions. Though the Kremlin insists it is not planning an invasion, U.S. intelligence suggests Russia could fabricate a false flag pretext to attack. Mr. Heap said the UK personnel sent to train Ukrainians to use British-supplied anti-tank missiles will be leaving over the course of the weekend. Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said an invasion could come at any time, while U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said an attack before the end of the Winter Olympics on February 20 is a credible prospect. U.S. Embassy staff have now been told to evacuate Ukraine as the 6,000 Brits living there were also urged to leave immediately amid growing fears a Russian attack would shut down airspace. New intelligence now suggests Russia will invade Ukraine this Wednesday, February 16. According to German newspaper Der Spiegel. I spoke with Foreign Minister Lavrov today to urge a diplomatic resolution to Russia's unprovoked military buildup around Ukraine, Blinken tweeted. Their talks come after U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Washington believes Putin could strike any day. Sullivan echoed President Biden's call for all American citizens who remain in Ukraine to depart immediately. Mr. Sullivan said an attack would likely begin with aerial bombing and missile strikes, which would shut down transportation by air, rail, and roads. The imminent threat follows weeks of growing tension as Vladimir Putin's buildup of troops and tanks continue to threaten Ukraine. Russia has been deploying military troops to the Ukraine border as NATO begins beefing up its own forces in the area. Last night, Brits were warned to leave Ukraine immediately as the imminent threat of war loomed. And civilians in Ukraine were attending open military training following reports that some 200,000 fully equipped Russian troops were on its borders. The besieged country has increased exercises amid fears an invasion may come at any time. Moscow has insisted its 140,000 troops on Ukraine's southern and eastern borders plus tens of thousands more to the north, and Belarus have no plans to invade. More than 30 tactical exercises involving the Russian Navy's Caspian flotilla backed by helicopters and troops will ramp up tension near Ukraine's southern border from today, Sun. 6 Russian landing ships which can carry 2,000 troops and 40 tanks onto beaches are also in position within striking distance of Ukraine's southern coast. Earlier this week, Boris Johnson said the continent stands at the most dangerous point since World War II after flying to Poland to meet with leaders. This came as Vladimir Putin was warned that nuclear war could erupt if Ukraine joins NATO and accused the West of complete disregard for our concerns as peace talks failed. 1,000 British troops are now on standby for an invasion on top of the 350 Royal Marines on their way to Poland for joint Arctic warfare drills. But Armed Forces Minister James Heap said British troops helping with training in Ukraine forces to use anti-tank missiles will be leaving the country this weekend. There will be no British troops in Ukraine if there is to be a conflict there, he told the BBC. The US has also announced about 150 troops from the Florida National Guard who have been in Ukraine to help train Ukrainian forces are leaving the country. Russia has been warned it faces financial consequences if it does invade Ukraine. Satellite images show Russian forces massed near the border with Ukraine. Credit, EPA. The Russian and Belarusian armed forces take part in a military drill in Belarus. Credit, Getty. Ukrainian tanks are preparing to resist any Russian invasion. Credit, AFP.